So you help people understand dating, which is really interesting because dating as a successful entrepreneur is so completely different than dating pretty much any other time in your life. It could be fun. It's definitely frustrating and really just friggin' weird at times. And I know personally, at least, and I'm curious to see what you say about this, but personally, I don't go to bars. When I get off stage at an event, it's really tough to meet somebody in that scenario. So what are we left with? Like dating apps, which is awkward because you really got to be uniquely cautious when meeting somebody on a dating app, right? Um, and this is your world. So if you don't mind, I'd love to start with what are some mistakes that you see successful entrepreneurs making when they date?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something that I'm very passionate about in helping people, especially as people are getting back out there dating later in life. I call it dating in the second act because it is a different kind of dating. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make, because I do a lot of free calls, and I'll get on a call and I'll ask people what is it that they want. And if you are dating later in life, for instance, and I'll get into the entrepreneur thing in a second because that's like almost a separate issue. But I'm just saying, if you're dating after, let's say, 40 years old, and you are getting back out there, and if you like had a relationship before, maybe you're coming from a marriage or a long-term relationship, your mindset is usually around another relationship. So a lot of people go back out there seeking another relationship, and quite honestly, a lot of people haven't even had a period in their life where they dated. I mean, back when we were younger, right? Like we were dating to get our partner and to grow with and have a family with. And so we have that mindset going back out there. And when I really talk to people and I kind of peel away the layers, what a lot of people then end up coming to the conclusion with is, wow, I need to just figure out who I am. And I want to have fun and I want to get my mojo back. It's almost like being a kid in the candy store. If you've only tasted a Hershey bar and a gobstopper, like there's so many candies out there, like you haven't really tasted everything.
Right.
And really, what I'm talking about is dating yourself, right? Like it's getting to know yourself separate from your partnership or the life that you had before. So I find that that mindset is a big mistake because that's where the burnout comes in because people are vetting so hard for their next soulmate when really they should just learn how to date without getting attached. And that's something I'm really passionate about. It's something that I love doing. It's teaching dating skills because really that's what we're, talking about. And flirting is a big part of it. I'm not going to lie. Because like all of what you said, like people don't know where to go, how to be, what to do, especially later in life. So I would say that's the biggest thing. I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I have other
That's
mistakes that people make.
So I want to go much deeper on that because I love that.
Yeah.
And it's not it the way I'm hearing it is it's not really just learning about yourself, although that's what you're saying, but it's learning about yourself and what makes you happy. Because that's, in my opinion at least, um, number one, so that you know what you're looking for when you're talking to people. And then what you said about having fun and being able to actually understand how to date is so integral. And I remember when I went through a divorce and then got into the dating world, which by the way, I didn't for a year. Like I got a divorce and then I didn't want to date for a year. I just kind of wanted to get my act together. Um, it was, it was awkward. It was strange. It
Mhm.
was scary. And now if I go out on a date, I literally am there to have fun. I pick a great restaurant for us both to enjoy. I want to know what they will enjoy in the restaurant so that we'll both like have fun ordering things and it'll bring up more conversations. And yeah, so I think the fun component, I'm glad you went down there.
I know it sounds so elementary, right? Like it's like, oh, well, but so many people aren't having fun, right? And I have a whole workshop series. I call it Stop Hating Dating because everyone's hating dating, but like once you start looking at dating as fun and really getting to know yourself in the process, that's where everything starts happening. And that actually leads me to another mistake that I see a lot of people make, especially when it comes to like people who are entrepreneurs or business people When it comes to flirting and dating and relating, it all happens in the right brain. It's all about being in the moment. It's about playing. It's about the feeling someone has when they're with you. And a lot of times, if you're a business person, you're used to being outcome oriented, right? Or goal oriented. And a lot of times that happens in the left brain. I work with a lot of high achievers and left brain people. And the very thing that you're good at when it comes to business, right? And entrepreneurship is the very thing that makes dating really hard. Because what's really fascinating is if I do a lot of flirt workshops, right? And if you look at the dictionary's definition of flirting, it's fascinating. It's to behave as though you are attracted to someone without the serious intentions of an outcome. That's it. So that last part is what trips everybody up, right? Because everyone's worried about what's next. It's like, oh, I don't know how to flirt, or I don't want to give that person the wrong idea, or I feel awkward. It's like it shouldn't really be any of that. It should be something about being in the moment and being playful and creating a magnetism that just draws people to you, because that's the art of attraction, right? And once you feel that, that increases your confidence, your sexy confidence, and then opportunities just start happening. And again, it's all in the process of getting to know yourself.
So I hope you don't mind. I'm going to be very specific. Um, so let's take it from before date and
Yeah.
then go to date. So flirting, and again, I'm looking at this strictly from an entrepreneur standpoint, getting into the dating scene. And the reason why I say that is because you have to understand, probably I'm replying to a text in the middle of a meeting or after a long day of work or even right before I go into meetings. So in that scenario, it's texting. So if somebody is texting somebody, give me an example of flirting prior, like never met. We've never met in person. Can you give me
You've
an example?
never met in person, and so
Right.
you like met on an app
Yeah.
or an exchange on
Dating
social
apps.
media, something like that. Yeah. Well, and this is another thing that I really work on with people, because you would be horrified. Like I like to go under the hood and look inside. It's not just you reporting to me like what's happening. I go into people's Bumble accounts. I go into it and I see these conversations. And a mistake that a lot of people make is that it looks like a LinkedIn exchange. It's like this Q&A session, and people are firing questions back and forth, and it's dry and it's serious. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're used to being very productive and you're wanting to get things done, and you just want to like get to the date, and that kind of thing. But when you do that, you're losing the sense of, again, playfulness and connection. And actually, the most interesting and exciting conversations are ones that are whimsical and gamey and not really saying anything at all, because once you feel that playfulness and connection, then you'll want to move on with that person to actually meet. So, what I teach a lot of people, especially as they're building rapport through DMs or texting, is just throwing out cute questions, using emoticons so that you can feel the tonality in that, because it's different if you say how are you question mark versus how are you question mark kissy face. Like there's a totally, because we don't have tonality in there. And honestly, again, like if you haven't dated for a long time and you're getting back out there, you're also learning the modern dating world, which is different than a long time ago. Like we didn't have texts. We didn't have apps. We had to actually use that thing called the phone that had the little rotor. Do you remember that? Like we had to dial the phone.
I'm not going to admit that I do remember that.
I mean, I'm totally admitting that. And also we were just used to meeting people in person. Now, I am a big fan of teaching people how to meet IRL in real life, because I believe that that is, well, I'll put it in business financial terms. I believe that our financial portfolio is just like our dating portfolio. You need to diversify as much as possible. It's never a good idea to just rely on the apps or just texting, right? So, everything that we're talking about here, what applies online should apply offline. And I find that, what makes things hard online, like through the texting, people also have a hard time just interacting in the real world and having a conversation that's playful and fun. So it works both ways. And that's why, again, this is a skill. And once you understand that it's a skill and you have to practice it over and over again until you become more confident with it, that's when it becomes fun.
Yeah, so I've got to break in because it's um so when you said IRL, I just assumed what you meant was going from app to date. But I think what you're saying is actually meet somebody out. Like when
Yes, I
you go to some,
know. Foreign concept, right?
well, so yeah, it's not a foreign concept, but it's a much more difficult concept
Correct.
because like for somebody like me, and I'm sorry that I am literally putting everything using myself as the guinea pig here, but it's very greedy. I think this is going to be good for me. Getting out to places, I don't go out places to meet. Like I go out for business. I go out and as you know, I'm on stage, I speak, or I'm in business meetings. So I'm not in a restaurant where I might be alone and be in a position where I'd walk over to somebody. And I don't go to bars. Like I think meeting in a bar, and by the way, let me ask you a question from a woman's standpoint. A woman who goes to a bar and is just sitting there by herself, not quite sure, and this is horrible for me to say, maybe, I don't know that that's the person I want to meet. Are they there just to pick up a guy? And if so, do they pick up 12 other guys that week? Just, you know, and that could be a horrible statement for me to make. And I'm so sorry if it is. But I think the same thing about guys. If guys are in bars to meet women, maybe they're there all the time and they're just kind of dogs.
So you're exemplifying right now of what I said before, of what a lot of you very successful entrepreneurs do. And that is thinking about what's next and thinking about the outcome and worrying about what other people think or feel. And this is what I really help a lot of people with because it really isn't about worrying about any of what you're saying. It's more about just going after what you want and creating opportunities because you don't know what you don't know. And you're trying to problem solve already something that's not even a problem necessarily, right? And so,
Right.
this is where, and again, I'll put it in business terms. I create dating plans like you do business plans, right? We have to be more intentional in ways of getting out there because gone are the days where we have the infrastructure of our social life in college, right? Everyone's kind of swimming in the same pool and looking for each other. Well, you don't have that anymore, right? Like as you go out into the world, you have to create your own social life. And a lot of times, especially after coming out of a divorce, a lot of your friends are married. They don't get it. And as nice as the married folk are, and let me just say, like, you're lovely people if you're married listening to this. It's just that you don't get it, right? Like you don't have the energy. You're not in that mindset of being single and flirting and having fun with everyone. And that's really what I try to do. So a lot of people call me kind of like Hitch meets What Not to Wear, if you know those references. Again, I'm aging myself, but I go out there and I help people, first of all, get a great style so that they feel amazing because I'm an image consultant as well. And then we'll go out into the field. Yes, we go into the wild and I teach people how to, oh my God, talk to somebody who is sitting at a bar. And, the truth is that there are people everywhere, right? There are great women everywhere. They're next to you in line at Starbucks. They're at all of the venues that you go to, your conferences. That's a great place to meet women. But somehow, like, we don't think of that as an opportunity for dating. But for me, dating is just networking, just like you do for business. And there are chances and opportunities to meet people everywhere. Um, can I share a quick story around that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this happens all the time when I'm coaching people, but one of the things that happened where I was coaching this woman and she was this badass entrepreneur, businesswoman up in the Bay Area. I'm in Los Angeles, by the way. And so she hired me to go out and help her flirt and, just kind of get out of her head and get more flirty and that kind of thing. And we walk into a restaurant bar and there were two people there. Okay. One was a guy who was married because we saw the ring on his finger, and the other was a bartender. And she looked at me and she's like, "Kimmy, there's no one here. Let's go somewhere else." I'm like, "I'm sorry, there are two people here. We're gonna walk in, we're gonna talk to the two people, and we're gonna have fun." And she's like, "But there's not a lot of opportunity." I said, "That's what you're thinking." And so we sit down, we start having a great conversation with the bartender. The married guy is smiling at us. He loves the energy that we're creating because here's the thing. When you're creating a fun, flirty energy, you don't know who's watching you either. And this guy was watching us, right? And so he starts talking to us across the way. And actually, he turned out to be an amazing guy. And he starts talking about how he met his wife. And now I see my client just melting. It's like, oh my God, like, it was like such a beautiful love story, right? And we have this great conversation. He comes over, he buys us some wine, and we just continued to have a great time. In the middle of the conversation, I say to him, by any chance, do you have any friends up in the Bay Area for my friend here? He's like, it's so funny that you said that. I didn't want to like overstep my bounds here, but I have a friend up in the Bay Area who's single who I think you would really hit it off with. And so they exchange information. My client goes back, she starts dating him, and that guy becomes her boyfriend.
Oh, wow.
Right? Like it just, and again, this happens all the time, but this is the magic that happens when you start opening yourself up, getting out of your head and out of the apps, so to speak, and get into life. It's about making those connections that can create a lot more than you think.
So, so is the secret of that meeting, just that one example, the fact that you had the bartender to start with? Like, there's a reason to begin the conversation and a reason to build the energy because I mean he's working there. And then whoever else is around can catch that and feel comfortable talking. Is that is that part of it? Like, if I or somebody else were to go and have dinner at a bar, like sit
Mm.
at the bar, have dinner, or have a drink, would that be part of it, or would it be literally waiting until you can make eye contact?
So, one of the things that's really important when it comes to approaching and relating is to not have too much of an agenda. I have this like whole social engagement formula that I walk people through and how to get out of your head into like also conversations that are more heartfelt, that are more storytelling in nature. And the answer is yes and yes. Like it's like a variety of things can start a conversation or spark some interest because the bartender that's in front of you might not always be available, right? But it's using observation and getting really present in that environment so that you're connecting with people no matter who they are and where they are. I mean, I could tell another story that had nothing to do with a bartender, right? And what I find is that, and Chris, I'm not sure, but I'm just kind of taking a wild guess. Are you more of an introvert?
Oh
Okay,
yeah, oh yeah. Yeah,
I'm just
so,
taking a stab at the dark.
right. So, but you've seen me, right?
Yes, yes,
When I'm out there doing my thing, and
right.
when I'm at an event, I'm the exact opposite of an introvert. Like I'm walking back and forth all over the stage. I'm talking, I'm sharing stories. And then when I get off, I'm in the crowd and I'm hanging out and it's totally different. But in real life, like when I'm not doing that, I am very much.
Yeah. And so I'd say 90% of the clients that I work with are introverts. And the thing that also is hard is that there's a lot of energy going into your brain and trying to think about what to say, or, it's more methodical. Also, your battery gets drained a lot more than, like say that extroverts where they get energy from people, you get probably drained from people. And
No, I don't, but,
you
but
don't? Oh, okay.
no,
Okay.
definitely not. No, I just
Okay.
don't go out. Like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I love. I'll go out quad riding. I'll go out to the, walk on the beach at nighttime. I'll go out and I'm active. I'll do active things. However, I do a lot of active things that, like there's not going to be a lot of people
That's what I
around.
mean.
What's that?
Yes. That's what I mean, right? Like it's different being active and out and about doing maybe solo things or with one or two people than
Yeah.
being like actively social in a crowd or a party, that takes a lot more energy for a lot of introverts. Most introverts tell me that. And it's not uncommon for people who are really good at public speaking. Actually, I worked with some celebrities too, that a lot of people find that surprising because on stage, you have a different presence, but the reason why it's easier is because you have a role, you have a script, you have a purpose, right? So it becomes easier for you to be in the public eye like that, versus when all of that is stripped away and you're just walking in a bar as Chris, then it becomes harder. So that's one of the things again about this kind of transition or reinvention stage as you get out there in the world, it's figuring out what makes you tick, who you are, and seeing just what you're about beyond what you do for a living. And I think that that's another hardship for entrepreneurs because a lot of times our identity is wrapped up into what we do for a living, what we provide, right? And so it's really kind of discovering yourself beyond that.
Well, that brings up a question when it comes to dating as an entrepreneur, dating
Yeah.
another entrepreneur.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm curious about your feedback. I have seen that be difficult when there's two alpha entrepreneurs in a relationship. Is it just me, or is it like a normal thing, or what's normal out there?
I didn't even know that there is something that's normal
Okay,
there,
good.
right? Like we can make an argument for everything. And, it's interesting because there's different nuances and challenges with different types of professions, with different types of age groups, right? Like we all have challenges and there's really no perfect scenario, really. But what I do find, and actually, I did a big talk to a group of entrepreneurs. I don't know if you even knew that. And it was fascinating because we were talking about all these things and challenges. And and really, I can see how it could work really well when two entrepreneurs get together because it's a similar energy. There's an understanding of each other's kind of also world, so to speak, and the rhythm. The rhythm of which you work, which is very different than a 9 to 5 or somebody who doesn't work at all, who might feel a little neglected from an entrepreneur. So there's a lot of nuances. I don't think it's like right or wrong or what's normal or abnormal. I think what's it is whatever's right for you because there's been so many entrepreneurs who I actually think are like power couples, because they can kind of grow together, do business together. They understand each other. And it's just a matter of the person, really.
Yeah, I have had mixed uh, results like that in my life where I've
Yeah.
dated other entrepreneurs who are
Mhm.
strong women in business and had great relationships, and then a couple that were very like combative, almost not in a verbal way, just in an energetic way, and it didn't, eventually didn't work out.
Yeah. Like competitive almost.
No, absolutely not. So I am
Uh,
I'm the least competitive person,
yeah.
and but it was the amount of stress sometimes that an entrepreneur goes through when they're going through growth spurts. When you're in a relationship with another entrepreneur, there's an understanding, like I get it. But when there's two entrepreneurs who are consistently growing, then what was happening in one of these relationships was that she consistently needed support, and I was going through an acquisition at the time, acquiring another company, and I also needed support, and we were just like struggling to see who would just mentally and emotionally support the other one at the end
Right,
of the
right.
day. And it's like who gets the back rub first that night,
That
but
is
it became a
so
struggle.
well, actually, you're bringing up a really interesting point too that I'm seeing also in the work world, if you will. And I think again, living in this day and age is different than like in our grandparents' era, where now there's so many women working. And with that, we're seeing different roles and what femininity is and what masculinity is and who's approaching who. And there's like that the battles of the energies. And so there's a lot of layers here. I mean, like we could do a whole talk on this. But the thing that I'm finding is like from a woman's standpoint, she is having a really hard time, especially if she's an entrepreneur, balancing the masculine energy with the feminine and being able to let go and receive. And then on the flip side, the men are having a hard time and feeling emasculated from a lot of these powerful women because they're wanting to give, they're wanting to be the man, but yet they feel like there's no room for them. And so I think that's another challenge that I'm seeing out in the business world, just in general. And so it's a big passion of mine and helping women, feel sexy. In fact, I'm doing a retreat coming up called Spark Your Sexy just for women so that they can work on what I call the 5 F's, having fun, being feminine, flirting, paying attention to fashion, and also friendship. Those are my 5 F's for the women. And with men, I do a lot of dating retreats where I combine both men and women. And with the men, just helping them be more bold, helping them just go after what they want and not worrying so much about what other people think and feel. Because I think also, and I'm sure you've experienced this. I know I did after the divorce. Like you could be the most confident person in the world, but it shatters your confidence afterwards. And it's really about building confidence both as a masculine man and as a feminine woman. And to me, that's everything. Because a lot of times people will come to me and they'll say, Kimmy, find me a man, find me a woman. But really, at the end of the day, they find themselves. And that's what this is all about. Once you feel that, again, you'll attract the alike.
What do you think about making a list of what you're looking for in a person? You think that's important?
Um, Yes, and I'll answer it like that. Um, I think it's really good to make a list of all the things that you're looking for. I have a little different list. I mean, you've heard a lot of people talk about negotiables and non-negotiables, right? Like, and that's one kind of list. Then there might be just like qualities that you're looking for in a partner this time around, because, that's the other thing about dating later is that what you were looking for in your 20s is definitely different than what you're looking for now. And because you're
Mhm.
different, and that's really important to just feel into for yourself. But I also do something called a chemistry analysis where I'm having people assess different types of chemistry because often we get snowed into like it's almost like it clouds our vision of what we're really wanting in a person when there's certain kinds of chemistry that gets created. So that again is like a really important process that I help people with. But while the lists are really good, I always kind of put a little bit of a pause on the fact that you have to be careful that you're not hitting the list too hard. I see a lot of people and they're going through all the apps and the profiles and they're vetting their next boyfriend and they're vetting their next girlfriend and they're looking at the qualifications and what they want in a partner next. And they're vetting so hard that I call actually my ladies who do that, I call them the list ladies. And the men, like there's list men too. But it's almost as if no one's going to be good enough. But really, what it is that there's a lot of fear of picking the wrong person or picking wrong. If you're coming out of especially like a toxic relationship, if you notice, a lot of the things on your all lists are the things that maybe you were missing in your last partnership, right? And so if there's one little thing on a profile that looks like, let's say, like a woman had a string of narcissists in her relationships, and she sees one thing on the profile that looks like a narcissist, swipe left, and so you have to be kind of careful of that too. So again, this is where the growth is. This is where, you really have to kind of look at gaining more experience dating so you really get like a handle on who you are, but also all the other people who are out there too. A lot of people get swooped up into a relationship or the chemistry of something and they're not like really paying attention to what's important.
Yeah, I had a really great friend. So I mean,
Yeah.
still do. Really good friend who uh, got a divorce a year and a half before I did. So when I went through this, which is now years ago for me, he said, and I love this. He said, I want you to make a list of everything that you want in a, in your life, in a relationship. And then after you make that list, I want you to look at it and see if you deserve it, if you're the kind of person for each one of those that deserves to have that in your life. And then work on whatever it is in your life or in yourself or in your attitude or in the vocabulary that you use or anything that you need to work on in order to make that a reality. And I thought that's profound and wonderful. And any relationship that I've had since then, I think, what am I bringing to the table here? Like, how am I being the kind of person that I want to bring this out in her? Like, if it's more affection, how do I bring this out in her? Or if it's more whatever, time out doing adventurous stuff, how do I bring that out in her? How do I make myself a better person to bring that out? So interesting. I loved that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it is about looking at yourself. And also on the flip side, too, because I know there's a lot of like caretakers out there who might be so focused on the other person or pleasing the other person, because there has to be a balance with that, too,
Always.
that then they lose a sense of what they want. And a lot of people pleasers or, people who are caretakers fall into that category where then they don't have a voice and that they don't like date like a queen or a king, because that's also really important as you're getting back out there. You're looking at what you can bring to the table and give to others, but also it's a time to look at, well, what do you got for me? And again, there's no cookie cutter approach out there. That's why being a therapist, like there's no way I can just sit down with people and say, oh, here's your prescription. Our journey shapes us. Our past is connected to the future and the choices we make and the patterns that get created. That's why I call myself a dating strategist more than a coach or a therapist these days, because I just think we all fall into habits based on our upbringing. And it all stems from back in the day, like when we were little. And then how that plays out in our relationships, it's crazy. A lot of times it's just the same thing. It's like a broken record. And at what point do you just break that pattern? And it's hard to do that, when you don't have like a strategy into place to override it. But as you're getting back out there, as we all have, and myself included, I mean, I've been through such a journey. That's why I think dating is so important, because you're putting strategies in place to see how not only you can be different, but also the person that you attract is different.
So what kind of mindset, like I know this is now, I'm going to start going into my left, and I'm
Okay.
still not.
It's
You have to
okay.
pull me back.
That's what I am here for, being all right brain. So we're a good match. It's good.
Yeah, but so where I was going to go with that is, what kind of mindset would be the healthiest to have when you're looking. I'm going to go back to dating apps because that's where I am right
Okay.
now. Going out, I don't do that enough. Where I'm going out someplace where there's a lot of people, um, and I know that your original story only had two people in it, so I'm biting my tongue as I'm saying it. But but let's
Well,
just
Chris,
say,
next time I see you, we're going out. Just so you know, like I'm going to take you out and teach you this stuff. But anyway, we digress. Go ahead.
right, you have to have a hit list of all the different places in the area. We'll just go from place to
Oh,
place.
yeah, people are everywhere. Yeah, I have no problem with that.
So what kind of mindset would be best to have to, um, I don't know, just to bring out the most comfortable personality that a person might have, so that they are in the right energy to meet other people. And the reason why I'm asking that is because
Yeah,
we're talking, like, the people who follow me are entrepreneurs, they're CEOs, they're people who are in business
right.
almost all day. They're building things. So getting into that mindset and then putting themselves in this new mindset of, all right, I'm here to just be me now. I'm a person. I'm not a business right now. So give me some tips on that so that we could chisel some of this hardness off.
How much
Thank you,
time do we
Seltzer.
have? No, I'm just kidding. Um,
Nowhere near enough.
we'll have to do part two. Um, okay, so let me start by saying that and it's funny because when I work with people, especially in the business world, I always tell people to have like a almost like a dating plan in place so that they're at least giving themselves an hour before shaking off the day and then like going out into their social life. And within that, I'm always telling people to have a dating costume ready to go, meaning something that they're putting on their body in ways of clothes that shifts their energy, that makes them feel sexy. I mean, this is why the makeovers are so important. And that's why I kind of flip the script and work from the outside in, not the inside out. I know that raises a lot of eyebrows, but that's my whole formula. We can talk about that in a second. But, um, and also things that you can do to get in your body and get out of your head because the whole notion about being in the moment and being playful and engaging with people is not thinking about what to say, but more about how you want to be. And, for men, it might be just, running around the block or doing push-ups or with women, I tell get a playlist together and dance in your underwear and have a glass of champagne. Like anything you can do to get into that masculine, feminine energy is a great way to kind of just prep yourself. But beyond that, like if you can think about that the world is like a playground instead of like a scary battlefield. Like I think that's the mindset because a lot of times people are like, "Oh my god, it's so scary out there and I don't know how to approach that person or what am I doing? Where am I going?" But kids are one and you have kids, I have kids. I mean, just watch kids about 4 or 5 years old. I love them because they haven't developed filters yet, right? Like they're on the playground and they don't think like, oh, I shouldn't go up to, little Betty and, say something because she looks really busy. No, they're just going up and like, hi, you want to play? What you want to go on the swing? And if we can treat like what happened to us, right? Like, why don't we do that anymore? And that's actually what I do all the time. I'll just say, hi, happy Friday. Like, that's great. It doesn't have to be this like sexy, witty, entry. But the reason why is we've developed filters as we get older. And for whatever reason, I mean, a lot of times it's hurt. A lot of times it's fear of rejection. We have a protective kind of mechanism on us that becomes our love shield. And so we have to really learn how to just kind of put down the shield and just be and that playfulness is so appealing. But one of the things that I talk about a lot of times in my workshops, I call it the map method. It's changing your mindset, it's changing your approach, and it's also changing your perspective. The perspective piece is really really important. I kind of like almost use the metaphor of the matrix, like the movie The Matrix. It's if you walk around the world, it's the same world, but you put a different pair of goggles on and suddenly you see something different. It's amazing how different like your dating life can be. This is a great story. I have to share this as we're talking about it. There was a woman who called me up and she's like, Kimmy, you're my last hope. I'm like, oh God, like no pressure here. Um, I said, what's up? She's like, well, I've scoured the earth. This is what she says. And there are just no good men here. I mean, I've tried everything. She lived up in Montreal area. And I'm about to give up, but I heard, you really help people, so I'm giving you a try. I said, "Oh, well that's great, but I'm not sure that I can help you." And she's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, I believe that you believe that there are no good men out here, so I'm not sure I can help you." And she's like, "Well, but I thought you could." I said, "Well, no, I can help you if you entertain a different belief system that you can possibly believe that there are."
Right.
Is right. So this is like, again, this is part of the mindset too. And I said, well, she's like, well, okay, fine. I'll give you a try. She gave me a credit card. I said, look, before our first call, I want you to do one thing. I want you to walk to work because you walk to work. And this time, as you're walking, I just want you to try one thing. I want you to notice who's noticing you. Just that's it. That's it. Don't do anything else. And then we'll have our first call. She's like, well, I always do that. I said, I know what you're telling me that you think you do. I just want you to do that. Okay. She's like, fine. So she comes back on our first coaching call and she says, Kimmy, do you have a voodoo doll? I said, I don't have a voodoo doll. What happened? And she's like, I cannot believe what just happened. Like, I did what you said, and I'm walking to work, and all of a sudden, I see this gentleman on a bench, and he's really good looking, and he's looking at me. And I looked back at him, and before I knew it, I started talking to him. And before I knew it, he asked me out on a date. And Kimmy, I already went out on a date with him, and I really like him. I'm
Wow.
like, oh, you mean in the world where you said that there were no men out there? And she's like, well, yeah. And I really like it. That guy became her long-term boyfriend. I can't make this stuff up. And the thing is, it wasn't me, right? It was her seeing something different, believing in something different, approaching something in a different way. Now, she had a lot of other work to do as we were, going through the relationship with her. But the point is when you open yourself up to possibilities like that, that's when all the magic happens.
And that goes back to what you were saying before about being a kid and like getting rid of that filter. I remember when I have so many wonderful memories of when my daughter was growing up, but when I we were at the beach in Hawaii one time, and we were literally just we laying on the beach, and my daughter just got up and walked over very slowly to a woman who had two young girls about her age. Just slowly kept looking back at me and inching closer to this group of girls, and then slowly just knelt down right next to them and started playing in the sand with them. And it was my heart was just I was just so amazed at her bravery. Like, she wanted to play with them, and she just walked right over and played with them. It's such a clear vision in my head. I will never forget that. And she's like my mentor when it comes to having courage to go and and just do things with people. I mean, I consider myself very outgoing when it comes to business, like very confident in
Yeah.
business. Very, I get it. It's my sandbox. Like, I get it. But what you said about being a kid, like, I'll never forget that.
Well,
That's a
can you
great.
imagine doing that with, say, a bunch of pretty women at a beach? Like you're just starting to play with them. Like I
I
know
think they
that's
would think I'm crazy if I just knelt next to them and started playing in the sand. But it's
I think there's a way of doing it where you could like end up building a sandcastle together or something. Like again, it's we overthink things too much and really like as women we find that so attractive when guys can just kind of get in the sand and play, so to speak.
yeah.
And you men love when a woman's playful too. Like we all love play. And do you know there was a study done, this is so fascinating, and they found that the number one trait that both men and women are looking for when it comes to like first meeting somebody, it wasn't intelligence as much, it wasn't success as much, it was a sense of playfulness.
I
And
definitely
that's right, like, it's different even than humor, because you could be a funny guy or say, like, some jokes or that kind of thing, and humor's super important, but the sense of play and also recognizing how your body language is. So I do a lot of work with body language. 93% of communication is nonverbal, so it's not even what you say that's as important as how you show up and your presence. So the wardrobe is one, but also the body language, and so I always talk to people who are getting nervous in just meeting people out and about or, paying attention to their body language and the signals that they're sending, because that's half the battle. I mean, it could just be an eye contact, it could be just smiling, it's just being more comfortable in your body. Because kids do that, right? Like they don't care. They're smiling, they're chatting, they're talking to each other. So again, like it's that sense of connection through the energy that we feel with one another in our bodies is again, that's the charisma. That's that energy that just draws people to you.
so that's so I want to go deep into that.
Yeah.
Um, so because I was going to ask you this next because I want to go deeper into what you said before about starting from the outside in
Yeah.
instead of the other way around. But what you just said is like another step on that because it's showing up not just and I'll let you take it, but not just the outside with your what you're wearing, not
Right.
just the way you look and the way you smell and everything else, but it's also priming yourself so that you have the energy. So that when you do go out and you are with somebody, like, and I don't know what that is for everybody. Maybe it's meditating, maybe it's jumping in the sauna, maybe it's doing a workout, maybe it's walking just to clear your head, whatever it is, so that when you're showing up, you literally do have energy. Like people see it. Because I believe a lot of people are, like you said, attracted to the sense of fun or the sense of, what was the word that you used?
Playfulness.
Playfulness. Playfulness.
Yeah.
But it's energy also. I think that probably starts with you looking like you have the energy. And because I think people are very much attracted to that, I am at least very much attracted to that.
Yeah, everybody is. I mean, that's human nature. And, what we're also talking about is first impressions. And right now, research shows that it only takes 7 seconds to make a first impression. I actually think it's quicker than that. It used to be 30 seconds. And people are making judgments and assumptions based on two things: the wardrobe that you have and the attitude that you have, which is the body language, your energy, all of it. And actually, I just did a TEDx talk on it, and it was called How Marketing Yourself Attracts Love, because you
Okay.
can do all the inside job you want. Like, and I say this as a therapist, okay? So just like disclaimer here. I think the inside job is super important. But if you're not marketing yourself in a way that people get to know you, opportunities are going to pass you by. You could have all the knowledge up here, you could be the best person that you are, but if you don't have that energy that, hi, I'm approachable, I'm open for business, I'm happy, I'm positive, I'm fun, then there's an incongruency, right? Like people won't get to see that beautiful part of you. And that's another mistake I think a lot of people make, is that they focus so much on the inside stuff, and that can almost be like analysis paralysis. It's like when I had my hot mess story happen, I remember using that as an excuse, because people would come to me and they'd say, Kimmy, when are you going out and dating? I'm like, oh, I'm just doing the work. Right? Like, oh, I'm doing the work. How many times have you heard that? Right? I'm doing the work.
I've heard it. I've never said something like that though.
No, but this is a big thing right now that everyone's saying, and honestly, like I believed it, and this is what I used to. I mean, I used to believe in the inside out, and so I did. I went to therapy. I had like all the books. I did everything, but then it became almost a crutch, an excuse to actually put myself out there. And so doing the work ended up being more fear of really like putting myself into action. Right? And no one changes in a state of comfort in your cocoon. You only change in a state of discomfort.
So
And so
what
when
made,
you,
what was the change in your life that brought you back over?
oh, you want me to tell my story?
Of course.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. Well, I thought you'd never ask. So again, I tell this story, in my TEDx talk, but and in every talk that I do, because as much as like, being a trained therapist and an image consultant and all these things, like you, like I have a lot of training. The real reason why I'm so passionate about doing what I do is because of my story. And what happened is I had a very traditional life. I'm from Chicago. I, had the picket fence, the traditional job, the dog, the kids, the husband. I still have the kids, by the way, but you see where the story's going. It's much like yours. But for me, it was years ago. And um, we pick up and we move across the country. We plop down here in La La Land. I'm in Los Angeles. And it was like almost instantaneous. It's like that's where the record stopped. And the life that I knew completely disappeared, because we end up doing what all the other people here in LA do. We get a divorce. I'm just kidding. I mean, really, I would have been here anyway, but I do think it sped up the process because we were removed from our support system and kind of the insulation of our life. And when we were faced with each other without everything, we saw where all the problems were. And there I was all alone in my new castle, not knowing what to do with my new life. And on top of it, I'm a friggin' therapist, right? Like, it's like I should know better. And so it was almost like a double whammy for me. And like I was saying before, I did everything that I was taught to do, that I help people with. I did do the work. But here's the thing. I still couldn't get out of my own way. I tried to, but I fell into a very dark hole, and my clothes reflected it. Because if you saw me back then, you would not be seeing me wearing pink or all the bright colors that you see me in conferences in. I was dressed in black all the time with oversized clothes. I didn't even see my body was changing and shifting. I was still wearing the nursing bras and I wasn't even nursing any longer. Like I was so stuck in my mindset, in my clothes, and nothing was working. And so this is what flipped the script into what I do today. Everything happened in this moment where I literally woke up, and I don't know what possessed me in that moment to really take a hard look in the mirror. And I was just horrified at what I saw. I mean, I just saw this frumpy, sad, unattractive mom. And I thought to myself, who would love me? Like, I remember feeling that way. And so I decided to take action because I was so fed up. I was just in that state. Like, I'm going to do something pretty untraditional. I'm just going to go shopping, right? Shopping therapy. So I go shopping and I say, I think I'm up leveling myself because I'm getting new clothes. No, I'm doing the same thing. I'm putting black clothes in my arms yet again. And this personal shopper, she comes up to me. I now refer her as my guardian angel. And she says, Ma'am, I've been watching you and I really think you should try this on. And she holds up a red dress that looked like 3 sizes too small. And I said, That's so sweet of you, but that's not my size. And that is so not my color. She says, Honey, that is your size. That is your color. Try it on. Just like that.
Wow.
And it was like she hit me over the head with that red dress. I call it my red dress moment. And it's the moment that I teach everyone. It's the moment when you stop numbing out, when you wake up, when you try something different, when you really like feel into something. And so I said, she's right. Nothing else is working. So I slip into that red dress. I squeeze into it and I twirl around like Cinderella. And I was like, yeah, like I just remember staring at myself in the mirror and I'm like, wow, I haven't seen myself like that in so long. And there was this like visceral response that happened to me. And so I bought the dress that day. This is where everything happened. I bought the dress that day almost as a costume because I didn't believe it yet. But I'm like, I'm going to marinate in this and I'm going to just do an experiment. I'm going to walk out into the world and just see what happens in this red dress. And I kid you not, Chris, I went everywhere in that red dress. I went to the coffee shop. I went to the grocery store. I walked my dog. And here's where everything started coming to me. I started noticing you men noticing me. And to my surprise, I didn't like it. I'm like,
Oh,
oh my God, this whole time I have been scared. I was keeping myself invisible from you alien men because I was just scared. Scared of being seen. I was scared of rejection. I was scared of, finding the love again. And so I was using the black clothes as a cloak. And it wasn't until I got super comfortable being seen. This is why the outside was so important in this story that I realized that there was a symbiotic relationship between the outer and the inner when it comes to confidence. It's not superficial. How we put ourselves out into the world, it directly responds to how we feel inside. And I see it time and time again now with my clients. So I flipped the script and after that, and I now work from the outside in. And I have kind of these 3 pillars that I work on with people. And the formula is called the charisma quotient, which is the name of my podcast, which you're coming on, by the way. And it's working on first your style intelligence. It's like what you said. It's not just the clothes, it's your energy, it's your first impressions, your sex appeal, your wardrobe, everything. The second is your emotional intelligence, right? How vulnerable we are, how we express ourselves, how we connect with each other, how we set boundaries. And then the third is your social intelligence. And that is where the social piece is really important. How we manage interpersonal communication, how we put ourselves out there, the social comfort we have. And yes, that includes flirting. So that's a long story of way of answering
no,
your
it's perfect.
question.
It's perfect. And it brought us right back to it, which is amazing. The outside in is so important. And I've heard it said in every aspect of life, just in a slightly different way. I've just never heard it said or even thought about it when it comes to dating, it makes such perfect sense. Thank you so much for saying it. So let's talk about it because outside in, I don't know if when you and I first met,
Yeah.
I don't remember if you complimented what I was wearing or you said it was baggy. But our conversation was about how most guys don't wear clothes that are fitted well enough, right? So they
Yeah.
don't flatter themselves with their clothes. They don't, and I know that the next time we saw each other was happened to be, I think, in Mexico at another event, and we were talking about one of the speakers who had very baggy clothes on.
Yeah. I do remember that.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not. And by the way, he's a real good buddy of mine, so we're not going to mention his name. But
Right, right. That's not important here.
no, but I'm not. Do you remember the first time we met? Was I? I don't remember what I was wearing. If it was it baggy at the time, was I still not understanding it? But I don't think I was because it took me about 2 years after my divorce, which is again it's a while back, to actually understand clothes. And I don't understand them. Like I don't profess to be a great dresser, but I do understand some basics, and I went through many levels. The getting things to actually fit me, that was the first level, and
Yes.
then and then there was another one which has been relatively recent, maybe a year ago. I understood. I was taught by a personal stylist who's an amazing person, and she took me shopping, and she said, "You look great, but you don't necessarily match really well. So we're gonna go and we're gonna pick out things so that from feet all the way up, like you match, and then you have accents, and you have nice sunglasses, and you have a nice thing around your wrist, and went through the whole 9 yards. And I didn't understand. Like you don't understand that you don't what you don't understand, and that's definitely where I live constantly because of this.
Oh my God, I love it. Well, right, you can't see what you can't see either, right? We can't see ourselves, and that's why I love helping. I feel like sometimes I'm a mirror for people, just reflecting back to what the world is seeing. Because what sometimes when you look in the mirror, you also see something different. When I do a lot of virtual makeovers too, by the way, so if anyone's interested, and one of the things that I make people do is take pictures of themselves full length in different outfits, and I won't even do the session with people until they do that, because there's this thing that just like clicks when you see a picture of yourself, because to your point, like especially if style hasn't been something that you enjoyed or learned about growing up, men in particular, you're right. Like I hate to generalize, but yeah, like that's not something on a Sunday afternoon that you guys are all talking about,
Oh no,
and
you're not generalizing. It's the truth for the most
right.
of the people that I hang out with. But it would be nice if there's a magic wand, and it would be really nice if there's somebody like you who could do a virtual, like you said, you do the virtual consultations, which I think is probably amazing to be able to just bring a camera into your closet and then take snapshots of you in outfits, so that you then have a bunch of shirts that actually look good and fit, a bunch of slacks or jeans or whatever, and then you understand how to put things together. Do you, or I don't know if you're old enough to remember this. There was something when I was a kid called Garanimals.
Yes. Oh my God. Talk
Okay.
about that all the time. Yes, we're of the
Which
same era.
I think
They
I
were
am
fantastic.
shocked that they're not still around.
Why don't they do that now for adults? Like that should absolutely be, especially for men. Men ask me for that all the time. Isn't there something like Garanimals? Give me like they do.
The most, in my
Yeah.
opinion, one of the most brilliant freaking inventions, and it's gone. Like it was here
Right.
for a day and gone. But it was wonderful. Like you matched the giraffe, the pants that had a giraffe tag on it with the shirt that had a giraffe tag
Yes.
on it, and you knew that they worked together. They should
Well,
have that for
I
guys.
know. While I can't provide a Garanimal for you, I at least I do have kind of a system, and actually, and everybody can do this at home. I call it the three C's. This is both for men and women. Um, and it's just keeping those kind of general rules in mind as you're thinking about your style or doing like a closet audit. Number one is the cut of clothes. And in order to figure out what cut works for you, I'm very scientific in the way I approach clothes. I'm not like this LA stylist be like, oh, just wear this and you'll look fabulous. Like it is about your lifestyle and your body type, actually. So for women, there are 5 body types, and men, there are 3 body types. And actually, I have a free style guide. If you just go to kimmyseltzer.com /style. You can pick up for women, it's a body type guide where you measure your shoulders, your waist, your hips, and that determines what body type you are. And then I go over in the guide what clothes flatter that figure and what clothes to stay away from. And for men, it's a man's fashion manifesto. Because you don't have as many body types, I do go over also grooming tips for you men too. Like, I mean, men, it doesn't take a lot to impress us, but we do notice these things like trim the nose hairs, file the fingernails. Like, that stuff matters. I feel like actually women are more visual than men. We can talk about that in a second. But anyway, that's a great way of getting started is just understanding the cut based on your body type. The second C is color. We don't think about color, but color is so attractive. And if you're a woman, I'll just give you a secret that men are highly attracted to red and pink. It's not your fault. But there's actually research that was done and it has to do with fertility that men are they just gravitate towards red and pink. So that's really cool. If on your profile, you have to have like a red dress or something like that. And then for men, it's blue. And so, Chris, you're wearing a blue shirt. Good job. I hope you have a picture of you in your profile with something blue on.
I
Um, and,
totally do
and
not.
yeah, and blue
Yeah.
also means authority too. So there's also like different associations with color, but you also have to know the right color based on your skin tone as well. So there's like different colors that will read differently on different skin tones. So that's something I work with people on. And then the third is I just call confidence outfit, meaning there is something in your closet that you always grab when you have like a social event or a date. What is that? Take it out, look at it. What are the elements that make you feel confident? Is it just the comfort of it? Do you get complimented in it? And once you figure that out, then it's just getting more of that. So just keeping those things in mind, at least it'll be a guide.
But color
Yeah.
confidence outfit. Yeah, that's amazing. Um, I got totally sucked into that, and I lost what I wanted to talk to you about. It so the outward, the outside,
Yeah.
starting with the outfits, understanding the color that works for you, understanding the shape of everything, understanding the way you feel great in, because that's going to affect your energy and the way you portray yourself and the confidence you have that exudes. And then acting like a kid and being open to actually just walking over and having fun and saying hello.
Bam. I mean, that's literally like if you just work on those three things
Mhm.
and you get super confident in it. Obviously, there's so much more to the story, right? Like it's not just, oh, boom, do this and magic will happen and you'll have your soulmate tomorrow. But it can feel very magical when you have something to start with. I always say start small because it's the smaller wins that add up to the bigger success. I think that's what overwhelms us because people will say, oh, are you going out and dating or just be more confident? It's like, well, that's too lofty, of a goal. But if you break it down, well, what are the skills that I need to leverage right now to feel good, to build that confidence that will add up to the end result eventually? Now that makes sense. So like all the workshops, all the things that I do with people are really those measurable kind of skill-based things that people do. And I've been calling myself more of a confidence therapist within all of this because at the crust of everything that we're talking about, it really does have to do with confidence. And the way I define confidence is very simplistic. Experience. That's it. I don't see it any other way. I don't think that there's somebody out there that's not confident. Like Chris, to your point, you're super confident in these other areas of your life, like when it comes to business and that why? Because it's a known entity. You can do it with your eyes closed. But when you first got into being a business person, you had to think about it, right? And how did you get more confident? Well, you just kept doing it until you practiced it, and now you can do it with your eyes closed. Same thing when it comes to dating, relating, flirting, being playful, all of this stuff. It's just repetition and practice.
Yeah, I want to I want to pull us back to entrepreneurs, and
Yeah.
specifically, I'm going to ask you a question kind of that we started with, but I'm going to I think I'm going to start answering it as I ask you because I got a million things going in my head. So, what I want to ask you is the three biggest mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making when it comes to dating. And I'll start, and this doesn't have to be on your list, but I'll start with what I see a lot because I'm very grateful that I have a lot of entrepreneurs in my life, like people inside of my companies, all the C-level people people inside of my companies, um, friends who are entrepreneurs, my board of directors, like pretty much everybody in my bubble is entrepreneur or married to it. And one of the things that I see when at least the male entrepreneurs are talking to me about dating is they talk. And by the way, I've been on dates with people, like where a friend will be with a date and I'll be with a date. And I see this in action and it makes me cringe sometimes, where they just talk about work so much
Yeah.
and they believe that that is,
Yeah.
because it makes them comfortable talking about it. They think that their date is comfortable listening to everything that they're going through, or they're going to be impressed by it. And I found two bad things with it. And what the first bad thing is, number one, I don't necessarily want somebody that I'm dating, especially in the beginning, to know a lot about what I do. Because if they don't know me very well, I feel like they think, I don't know, I could be just attracting somebody who just wants money or just wants a lifestyle instead of really enjoys just me, because I want to be able to enjoy time as people, not just when we're spending money. But the second big thing that I see when like I've one very vivid dinner in mind where this friend of mine was just talking business, 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 and I watched his date just glaze over and just get overwhelmed and just keep looking at me or the woman that I was with to try to talk about something else because it's boring and overwhelming. I think for a lot of people, it's like I get excited when I talk about business or when I hear somebody talk about it, but not during a date. Like I want to flip that switch and now just be Chris instead of, Mr. Chris or whatever.
Yes. I love that you're highlighting that because it kind of goes back to what I said before is that not only I always tell people no matter where they are and what they're doing, if they're meeting people for the first time and it's more of like a flirting situation or dating, they're attract, never talk about work. Ever, period, both for men and women, because of what you just said. Not only it's just not sexy, right? Like everybody then gets into business mode. And so then it becomes more of this like intellectual, factual talk. And attraction doesn't happen here. It happens based on how someone feels when they're with you. That's why I go back with emotions and energy. It happens in the right brain. That's why I do so much like emotional intelligence work and I do a lot of storytelling exercises, actually. So
That's
instead of just spewing facts back and forth about business, share a story. Talk about something that happened to you. Be like something that's humorous or surprising or shameful that like brings out like vulnerabilities. And when people shift in those conversations, it's amazing too, the difference in the energy and the interaction. Like you could go from that factual business talk where people are like, oh, I just didn't feel the chemistry. That's what happens after that. Oh, I just didn't feel the chemistry to one that's more playful, that has and whimsical, that has nothing to do with anything, then like, oh my God, I love that person, Because we're just so attracted to that feeling. And I have a little hack for people. So, if you're meeting somebody for the first time and they ask what you do for a living, because that's such a common question, right? One of the things that I teach a lot is asking a question back. And so and I've done this so many times when I'm coaching out in the field. I'll say, what do you think I do for a living? And then I play a game. And now we're playing a game. Now we're playing a guessing game. And what's great about that is that I get to hear how someone perceives me. So if someone guesses that you're like a lawyer or accountant, you know you have to work on your energy. Like you do not want to be guessed, right? Like you don't want to be guessed that. But also, when I do this exercise, do you know I never end up saying what I do for a living?
Wow.
It just ends up in this playful like banter. Then we just move on to something else. Cause really, like at the end of the day, you could go read someone's LinkedIn. Who cares? I just want to see if I like you in the beginning. There's plenty of time to talk about work.
Yeah. And yeah, that's if you're meeting somebody in a bar and you've never, talked to them. If you meet them on a dating app, they've cyber stalked you a little bit. So they kind of
Yeah,
know
like you can get
what
all
you
that
do.
information, right? Like who cares?
It's
Like
so
don't
easy.
talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, but you're not going to get out of this. I asked you for three. Three
Oh,
biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make. That was one. And you
oh,
stole that
I
one
said
from me.
it.
By the way, it's not
Oh,
even cool that you stole that one from me.
wait,
So,
wait. First of all, I don't think you were listening because I said it in the beginning. We were going over the mistakes, but I'll recap. I'll review.
okay. Well, entrepreneur mistakes, not just dating mistakes, but specifically, people who are locked up in their business brain a lot.
Right. Well, and what I was saying, and maybe I didn't clarify it as a mistake, is I do believe a lot of entrepreneurs are left brain heavy.
Yes,
And
true.
so they're thinking too much. So that's what I was saying as a mistake is that entrepreneurs tend to think too much about things rather than having time and space to just play and let go and get out of that kind of like headspace. Right. And so that's super important. The second thing is time. As you know, entrepreneurship and being an entrepreneur is 24/7 job. We're not 9 to 5ers. We can't close the door at 5 o'clock and have a weekend where we're not thinking about business. We have to make a conscious effort. And even in that effort, it still leaks. And so what happens with that is I hear a lot of entrepreneurs say, I just don't have time. But it's not really about time. It's about priority. And if this isn't a priority and you're not making it, then nothing is going to happen. Right.
And that comes across that's a very powerful message that comes across so clearly.
Oh yeah. And the thing is it's hard because well, you asked about can two entrepreneurs be together? Like that's like the good news, bad news. Cause number one, that sense of time is the same. But then you have to make such a conscious effort to create time for each other that's separate from the business. Because really what we're talking about here is we're actually in a relationship with our business too. So we're right. Like, so it's not just, you're not just dating me, you're dating my business too. And how we all navigate that as well. Like, and again, it's not like there's a clear answer, but it's being conscious and aware and carving out that time to make ourselves a priority. And I think the other thing around that and another mistake is that because, and we talked about this a little, because our identity is wrapped up into our other entity, our business, we don't see ourselves as someone separate and important. And I think, we don't even see our self worth as something beyond, again, with what we do and what we offer. And so taking the time to really explore yourself and having that fun time and asking yourself, well, who am I separate from the relationship I came from, separate from the work that I do, but just me, Kimmy, and you, Chris, like who are we as human beings and what can we offer? And that can be just enough because here's the other thing about entrepreneurs, and you know this, is there's this sense of never enough, like, or being good enough. We're like perfectionists, like we're high achievers. And so then dating becomes like that too. Is it enough? Even in the people
Wow.
that we seek.
Wow. That's scary. That's
Did that strike a chord?
I don't know if it did, but so I don't know that I see that in me, but that is scary. Because I think there's a lot that is
Yeah.
parallel between entrepreneurship and dating. For example, I am highly passionate about business, and that same amount of passion goes into my relationships. Like I'm highly passionate with when I'm in a relationship. I'm passionately driven with my kids. I'm passionate about health. Like what I do when I'm doing it, like I'm all in no matter what. But what you just said, if there is that parallel nature with that, I'm wondering if that is also parallel in my life. Where if you don't, you don't as an entrepreneur ever feel like you're enough. You always, and by the way, that's part of why you're a successful entrepreneur. You don't
Right.
you don't become a highly successful entrepreneur like the greatest people on my team, the highest up, the CTOs, the CEOs, the CFOs inside of my companies, they are always striving to be better. It's the lowest person on the totem pole who always thinks that they're giving more than they get paid for. The highest people are always the ones trying to be better. So, like when you get to the ownership level and you're like, geez, we have to be better. As a company, I have to be better. As a leader, I have to be a better, a giver to my customers, to my prospects, to my team members. I have to be better, and that's what makes you better, and that's what drips down from the top and makes the company better. So I'm wondering now, is that the same inside of a relationship? I don't think it is for me. Like I don't think I look at somebody and say I could get better in somebody else. In fact, I know I never do that. But I always do think, am I giving my best to this? Which is good to a
Mm-hmm.
degree, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also very, could screw me as well.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just think it's life, right? Often the things that make us so successful in one area then makes it challenging in others. And it really is just taking a look at that and how that plays out for yourself and finding the balance within that. I'm just saying, I know that the trait of one of the personality traits of an entrepreneur is that high achiever of always striving to do better, and how that gets played out with who who you're looking for as in a partner, and also like what you're providing as a partner, that could interfere sometimes with that. And then it also ties into the self-worth piece, right? Because I always and a lot of men have that. I'm working with a man right now. He's one of my VIPs, and it just completely was like light bulb moment, because like what we're talking about, highly successful, he's a speaker, leader. He's like, "Kimmy, at work, like I'm unstoppable. Like people would never know that this is an area in my life that I'm kind of weak in and not feeling good." He's like, "How can all these people come up to me and I can be so social and a leader, and then like out in this wild that you're taking me in, I feel like a dumb kid," you know? And one of the things we discovered and uncovered is that a lot of it had to do with his upbringing and messages he got growing up. And he always had to take care of everybody, but kind of neglecting himself. But he was always striving for the best. And he was getting so hard on himself for not being the best, even now in this area of his life. And it was debilitating him, so it would even trickle down to him not approaching a woman because he didn't feel like it was good enough or the right time or whatever it is. And so you see there, it plays off in different ways. And one of the things I said to him, and it just hit home, I said, "I want you to start thinking about, it's not what you can do for a woman that is your self-worth, but just who you are." And he's like, "I'm not sure I know who I am beyond that." And I said, "Well, that's where we're working." Like that was, this is his journey right now. And he's starting to get it, but still, like, I mean, to your point, it's not like one size fits all. It might not resonate with everybody listening to this, but just know that there's certain aspects of an entrepreneur that has that, effect, and how that is interfering with your relationships.
Yeah. So what I mean, you said something earlier that was profound when it comes to that, which is getting to know yourself. Sit down, go through, try to figure yourself out and what your goals are in dating. Yeah, very profound. All right, Kimmy, How you mentioned a resource before, but do it again. Give people a way to get in touch with you. It's kimmyseltzer.com, correct?
Yeah, that's my website. It's KIMMYSELTZER, like the water.com. And if you do /style, that's how you'll get your style guide. But you can get it, you can grab it right when you're on the site. You can also find me on all the socials at Kimmy Seltzer. And of course, Charisma Quotient is the name of my podcast. So definitely check that out. And Chris will be on that as well. And, I do a lot of these virtual workshops that have to do with these dating skills that we're talking about. And every month I do a different dating skill. Like it could be flirting, it could be how to meet people in real life, and those are really fun. It's co-ed, it's interactive. You could go to stophatingdating.com and just see what workshop is there for you this month. And I would love for you to start taking action and just really it'll build your confidence overall.
Kimmy, thank you so much. This was fun. It was awesome, and you made me think a lot about myself and
Oh, good.
my dating stuff. So I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Chris. It was fun.